A psychic told this woman that there was a sealed bottle hidden somewhere inside of her house, and that until she found it and undid it, her life was going to keep falling apart. The problem was, she had absolutely no idea what bottle she was talking about or even where to look for it. And according to this woman, everything started shortly after she moved into this house that she was now renting. And within a few months, her finances collapsed, her relationship ended, problems started at work, and her family relationships absolutely deteriorated. And at the exact time, something very strange started to happen inside of that house. And eventually, things got so bad that she went and saw this psychic medium. But during the reading, the medium kept repeating the one bizarre phrase over and over: "You need to undo the bottle. You need to undo the bottle." She didn't know what she meant until months later when a paranormal investigation team led her to pull up the floorboards in one particular bedroom. And what she says that she found underneath them is one of the strangest and craziest things that I've ever seen. So I'm going to call this woman Claire. And obviously, I have no way of verifying whether everything that happened to Claire or whatever she experienced did in fact happen. So take this story as entertainment and you can decide for yourselves. But according to Claire, before moving into this house, her life wasn't perfect. It was normal, right? She had problems just like everybody. But she had a decent job. She was in a good relationship. She was paying her bills, and she was close with most of her family. And then she found this house, and it was an older rental, relatively small, and it was somewhere outside of the UK. Nothing particularly remarkable about it. It had nice wooden floors, 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, and most importantly, the rent was surprisingly cheap. So she signed the lease almost right away. And within a few weeks, Claire noticed something strange about it. The house felt very heavy, and this was the only way that she could really describe it. There were certain rooms where she would suddenly become anxious for no apparent reason, and there was this one bedroom in particular that really bothered her the most. It was supposed to become her office, this room, but she rarely ended up using it because every time that she sat inside there, she felt like somebody was standing in the room with her, watching her, and it made her very sick. And then these noises started. At night, Claire would hear what sounded like someone slowly walking down the hallway, 3 or 4 steps here and there, and then silence. She would get out of bed to go and investigate, expecting to find something or some answer for it, but there would be nothing. Cabinet doors were opening on their own occasionally. Objects that she distinctly remembered leaving somewhere would appear somewhere else. And there were several times that she woke up in the middle of the night because she swore that she heard somebody whispering in her ear next to her bed. But the strangest activity always seemed to center around this one spare bedroom, the one that was supposed to be her office. And sometimes the door would be left wide open when she knew that she had closed it. And there were other times that she'd walk past it and catch what looked like movement or a shadow person, somebody standing in there, but whenever she turned around to go look, there would be nothing or nobody there. And then her life outside of the house began falling apart. And I don't mean like, she had one bad week. It was like somebody had started pulling individual threads out of her life. Her relationship became increasingly hostile until her and her partner had to end it. Unexpected expenses started piling up. Her car needed repairs out of nowhere. She fell behind financially. Problems developed at work. And then she started fighting with members of her family over things that, previously would have it would be no bearing on their relationship. And according to Claire, the strangest part was that she didn't feel like herself anymore. She was constantly exhausted, irritable, anxious, and she was literally losing weight because she was so sick. She dreaded going home, but yet also at the same time, she didn't want to leave the house. And eventually, one of her friends convinced her to go visit this psychic medium. And Claire wasn't expecting much because she is kind of on the skeptical side. So she didn't tell the woman about the activity in the house. She didn't mention anything about the spare bedroom. And according to her, she definitely did not mention anything about a bottle. But during the reading, the psychic suddenly became distracted, like she was, like someone else was talking to her, and she stopped talking and she closed her eyes, and after several seconds, she's like, "There's something sealed." And Claire would ask her like what she meant by that, and the psychic would shake her head, and she's like, I can't explain it. And then she said something even stranger. She's like, you need to undo the bottle. And Claire would ask like, what bottle are you talking about? But the psychic didn't know either. She just kept saying that whenever she concentrated on Claire's house, she saw the image of something sealed inside of a container. And she kept repeating it over and over. Find the bottle, you need to undo it. Find the bottle, you need to undo it. So Claire left thinking the entire thing was absolutely bizarre, and she searched the house anyway. Kitchen cabinets, closets, garage, under the sink, and there was nothing. Eventually she stopped looking, but the activity continued and grew even more. One night she heard something slam against the wall of that spare bedroom so loud and so violently that she thought somebody was actually breaking into her house. Another time she woke up and she found the spare bedroom door wide open when she knows that it was closed because she doesn't go in there. And shortly after that, she claims that she started hearing scratching sounds coming from somewhere near the floor. And that's when Claire contacted a local paranormal investigation team, and they came to the house to investigate with cameras and audio recorders and different pieces of equipment. And while they apparently experienced several things while there that they couldn't immediately explain some of it. But there was one particular reading that kept getting their attention, and inside that same spare bedroom, their EMF kept spiking anytime it got near the floor. And there are also plenty of normal things that can cause an EMF to go off, like electrical wiring, bad appliances, outlets. And so initially that's exactly what they assumed, right? Bad wiring, except according to Claire, the readings kept directing their attention toward one specific section of the floor of the spare bedroom. And afterward, Claire couldn't stop thinking about it. The scratching, the bedroom, the psychic, the bottle, and finally she decided that she needed to know what was underneath those boards. So with the permission of her landlord, she got the okay to investigate, and she carefully pulled up part of the old wooden floor. And there was a dark cavity underneath when she opened it up, and she would shine her flashlight around, and at first she saw dust and pieces of wood and debris. And then the light reflected off something that was made of glass, and Claire reached down and she pulled up this old mason jar and immediately remembered the psychic's words, you need to undo the bottle. And she was like, is this the bottle? So the jar had apparently been deliberately hidden underneath the floor. Thin rope had been tightly wrapped around it, and something that appeared to be looking like human hair had been incorporated into the binding with that rope. And across the lid were layers of hardened red and black wax, as though like somebody had intentionally sealed it shut. And Claire said every instinct that she had told her like she needs to throw that thing out, and do not open it. But eventually, following the psychic's guidance about safely removing it, she examined what had been placed inside of it, and there was sand and a thick old black substance that looked like mud or sludge. There were small nails, and two of them had actually been tied together into the shape of an X. And mixed among everything else were what appeared to be human fingernail clippings inside of it as well. Clara said she immediately felt sick to her stomach, like she was going to throw up, because whatever this was, someone hadn't accidentally dropped it under there. Someone had assembled it, wrapped it, sealed it, and deliberately hidden it beneath the floor of that specific bedroom, that room where she's been having all these issues. And she contacted the psychic again, and following her guidance, she removed the jar from the property and she disposed of it. And this is where the story gets even, a little more strange, because according to Claire, the minute that she got rid of it, the house went quiet. The footsteps stopped, the whispering stopped, the bad feeling, the energy, everything stopped. She never heard the scratching beneath the floor again either. Literally, the house went from all this activity to nothing. And over the following months, her life slowly began to correct itself. She got a better situation at work, she made up with her family, she made up with her partner, her finances stabled out, everything went fine. And it was as soon as she got rid of this. And she went back to sleeping normally, and life went back to normal. So I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that jar had something to do with it, or do you think there was something else? Let me know in the comments.